How's it going? Today I'm going to take a look at a bunch of more details, leaks, information, theory, speculation, everything you can possibly imagine in regards to Pokemon Winds and Waves. So let's get started with the first thing, which is going to be that apparently the trailer, which I didn't really notice it when I was watching it, like, because it just speeds past a bunch of footage very quickly, but apparently, according to Centro, sadly, and while things can change between now and release, Pokemon Winds and Waves ran at 30 FPS at the reveal trailer, not the 60 FPS like Scarlet and Violet and ZA, which it's okay, right? It's fine. Again, it is just a video, right? And YouTube, unless you render videos in 60 frames a second, specifically when you make them, I know this because I have to render my videos in either 24 frames, 30 frames, or 60 frames, right? Oftentimes 60 frames is what they go to. But apparently the Scarlet and Violet, the Winds and Waves trailer only ran at 30 and not 60 FPS like Scarlet and Violet and ZA. And then when he says Scarlet and Violet, I'm guessing he's referring to also specifically with Scarlet and Violet the Switch 2 like versions, I'm guessing. But either way, according though to Polmo here, who makes a really good point, which is that Pocopia's first trailer, which Pokopia is about to pop out, was 30 FPS with no AA. Then a few months later, it got DLSS and 60 frames a second. So that's a good point to say that it is possible that we shouldn't worry about the 30 frames. That might be, fixed, or it might not be an issue by the time we get to Pokemon Winds and Waves' release in 2027. I mean, keep in mind, this game is coming out in 2027 for a reason, most likely. And all they showed us was a very small little vertical slice of information and locations, and they didn't show us the entire game. They didn't show us proper, regular gameplay. They just showed us cinematic footage, more or less, and that's probably because they are not fully finished with this game. They probably still have to do a lot of work, but they made sure this time, though, to show good images, to show you a good vertical slice of information, rather than giving you the bad stuff. So it's kind of an interesting point I wanted to share really quickly with you all and hear your thoughts. The next thing, though, which I've kind of spoken about this a little bit in my previous videos, but apparently, based on the Terra leaks, the Pokemon-shaped cloud, so you guys have seen this one. Personally, to me, this looks like a Gyarados. I've seen some other people like, that looks like nothing like Gyarados. That is a legendary Pokemon. It just looks like Gyarados, I'll be honest. But apparently, though, the Pokemon-shaped clouds that we see in the game, in the trailer, are actually related to a leak that we've heard, which is that this is just a new equivalent raid mechanic. So basically, think about how raids work in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which is like you guys know the Terra raid locations, which you find them, like the crystals, whatever. You guys know how the Terra raids work in Pokemon Sword and Shield, like with the red circles that you find. Basically, this is how they would work here, which looks like there's going to be a combination of two things. It's going to be a combination of like the outbreaks from Legends Arceus and regular raids from Pokemon. I'm guessing that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this, and based on information, and the regular raids we had from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So it's a Gyarados. The cloud will be shaped with Pokemon the raid is for. So if it's the shape of a Gyarados in the clouds, you know it's a Gyarados raid. If you see the shape of a Badoo, you know it's a Badoo raid, which is kind of cool. And apparently, somebody actually spotted at the start after Gen 9 artwork, it's Gyarados. And apparently you can see it here. Yeah, it's the shape again. It's like right next to my big fat head here. But you guys can see there is actually the Gyarados shape again, which, yes, it seems like this is going to be their way of actually highlighting where certain things are, like where certain raids are, which is really interesting. It's an interesting way of doing it. I like that because, again, this entire game is very much all about the environment, right? Winds and waves, they're natural phenomenons. That was essentially what they're going for here, is sort of everything has to be incorporated into the world properly. And I think this is actually a really cool way of doing it, instead of just having a random, I mean, crystals were fine with terrestrialization, but we don't have that here, right? It makes more sense to have something like this. It actually fits really well. But that was one of the other details. The next thing, though, is that apparently, according to Centro, we do know about this a little bit, but apparently the Rotom hoverboard is the main method of transportation. You guys can see that they're holding a hoverboard right here and on the back there. So basically, is the main method of transportation in Pokemon Winds and Waves. It allows you to sync to a Pokemon, which we talked about this before. Basically, you sync to a Pokemon and use its field ability. For example, when syncing to a flying Pokemon, the hoverboard gets the ability to fly. While synced to a Pokemon that can dive, you can go underwater. And when synced, you control the Pokemon directly instead of the protagonist who you just follow behind. Basically, it is something like this. You guys may not remember this, but this is the Synchro Machine. This is the Synchro Machine feature from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's second DLC, the Blueberry Academy, where in the Blueberry Academy, you can actually play as the Pokemon. You become the Pokemon. You control it completely. So they've already done this. They've already figured out how to do this concept. And now that might seemingly be connected directly to this game with, you know, the entire world, not just like, you know, like they had with Blueberry Academy with like a limited space, which is really awesome. And some people were asking like, will we have some kind of loading screen when we go diving? No, it's seamless, which makes sense. This sounds good in theory, but I'm worried about the execution. Does the Pokemon just have some sort of leash attached? Yes, it actually does, which yes, we have seen in this in leaks that there is going to be some sort of leash connecting you to the Pokemon. Basically, you're Santa riding that sleigh and Rudolph's your Pokemon. So yeah, that was one of the other things. The next thing though is apparently, again, according to Central, on Pokemon Winds and Waves, in Pokemon Winds and Waves, you'll actually have to explore dark caves where you usually can't see. However, some Pokemon glow in the dark and you can use them to see in dark places. So they're actually going to make Flash, you guys remember the move Flash, which nobody ever uses anymore nowadays? Well, Flash, or having Pokemon that just glow, it's going to return in some way. Like, not the actual HM Flash, but rather the concept of it is going to be returning, which is pretty awesome, man. Like, I like this idea, and it feels like it's going to make it really fun to explore. So, very curious to see how that's going to look like. Again, super curious. But we also had a bit more about the hoverboard from Central, who says, to give more context of the feature, it's basically the Synchro Machine 2.0, like we just talked about. You can sync with most, if not all, Pokemon. There's actually a leash between you and your Pokemon. Game Freak initially wanted for every Pokemon to be rideable, but ended up scrapping the feature, and this is the replacement, which I am sad that they didn't go for that, because I think every Pokemon being rideable would have been absolute cinema, like absolute peak. But we're not getting that, so it is what it is. Then we move on to the next thing, which is a bit of a breakdown from Pokisutami, which you definitely should check out on YouTube. Does great breakdowns and translations of Pokemon stuff from Japanese to English. But here's what Pokisutami had to say. So the game names, as well as how the official Japanese Twitter is hashtagging here, could be something worth noting. So the names are still Winds and Waves in Japanese, but written in katakana, the Japanese written text for foreign or borrowed words. However, the hashtag used, Kazunami, and then the first part, Kaze, I guess, means wind, and the Nami part meaning wave, right? But you put the two together like this, and it can be read as Fuha, which has a bit of an ominous meaning, trouble, adversity, or storm, which makes sense because we are going to be dealing with storms, bad weather, legendaries, which might be, you know, they're not going to be devious, but there may be some evil elements to it as well. Again, nature itself is unpredictable. Storms happen. You can't stop them, right? It's very intriguing. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about that real quick as well. Moving on. We do have more stuff to talk about. For example, apparently these little Pokeball balloons that you guys see in the sky here, these are actually going to be the indicators for where the different Pokemon centers are located. So yeah, if you need to figure out where a Pokemon center is, you just look around for one of these balls in the sky, and you know where to go. So yeah, Pokemon centers will have a giant balloon above them, so you can find them from a distance, which is pretty neat. Somebody actually asked here, is the seed Pokemon still real? We don't know, but most of its concepts was scrapped. So that's unfortunate. The seed Pokemon, for context, by the way, was supposed to be a Pokemon that you get to take with you through the story that actually changes based on how you play the game. But we don't know if they're going to keep that or not. It's to be seen. It's to be seen. Now we've spoken about this information. Next up, though, we have a few theories coming to us from, for example, Soul Silver says, is that her? Now he's talking about the what I say is just Gyarados, okay? I think that's just Gyarados. I don't know what anybody else is saying. But he has a theory, though, that maybe the Queen of the Southern Sea as the Naga, again, the Naga are like these serpent, human, fish people, you know, and basically Naga Serpent Pokemon could be one of the Winds and Waves box legendaries, which I think is going to be the case. But if true, it would be kind of odd to show only one legendary and not the other. So maybe both legendaries are Naga Serpents, or if this is related to Winds and Waves Gimmick, maybe this is our first look at the third legendary. I still think this is more likely related to raids, right? The third legendaries are almost always tied to the region's gimmick, and if the two legendaries are guardian deities, maybe the third legendary could be a destructive Naga Pokemon that is opposed to them. Depending on where in the world, Naga are seen as guardians or destructive forces. If you play World of Warcraft, they are destructive as shit. So both of the options above could work here. Either way, this is totally a tease, and it's the only dark cloud-shaped like a serpent in the trailer, which is true, but I think it's more likely a hint towards the raid mechanic, which I think would make the most amount of sense. But again, I could be waffling. Also, if you guys haven't seen this, but people did more comparisons in graphics, and I will do an entire video again talking about this because it is crazy. But if you again compare the graphics difference between Scarlet and Violet and so far what we've seen of Winds and Waves, it is crazy, the difference. Just insane. Also, interestingly, Yoridon did some discovery. So he says that it seems like yellow is involved in the color scheme somehow. I think it'll be interesting to see the box art and how it might tie into more of the design elements of recent games, which, yes, you can see it is kind of in the UI here. They use yellow and kind of like greenish, like, you know, kind of like hues, and then blue on the opposite end. And you can see on the actual two different versions of the main character, which we don't know the name of the main characters yet, but you can actually see that there's a streak of yellow and a streak of blue. So blue and yellow seems to be like the two colors they're kind of going for, with green also being used in one of the Winds logos. So kind of yellowish, bluish, kind of minty colors. I guess you could say, for Winds version. But yeah, that's pretty much what we have in regards to that one. Also, there's a cool breakdown here, analysis from Pokemon Millennium, who says, in the Pokemon Centers, we can actually see the design of the new nurse, which, yes, we can see the new nurse, which is right there. And we also see the Pokemart guy who's returned, right, which is pretty cool. But he says here that I wonder if the nurses will have different appearances like in ZA, which is possible. Now, the Pokemon Center also features the market with the new design of the merchant, which, yes, the Pokemart is back. Among the Pokemon Center decorations, we can also notice patterns inspired by Southeast Asian fabrics and dyeing techniques. Batik and Sonket, which are these ones you can see right here. These are two different kinds of pattern styles. And then they also say Sonket are luxurious traditional fabric, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, with geometric or floral motifs. Batik, which is an ancient Indonesian dyeing technique often used for traditional clothing like the sarong, which might be referenced in the market merchant's design. Additionally, the decorations might refer to peptran, a typical ornamental motif in Balinese, or, you know, Bali, wood carvings and decorations characterized by curved lines or floral or vegetal patterns, or, well, floral patterns, let's just say it like that. But yeah, they also did an entire thing here too, saying that Winds and Waves trailer showed us a new Pokemon Center structure, a design that breaks the past and perfectly integrates with the region's ecosystem. This structure is clearly an example of an open plan architecture typical of tropical areas. This choice isn't just an aesthetic one, but also very much a functional one. It serves to promote natural ventilation and constant airflow to combat the humid climate. Taking Southeast Asia's reference now an evident inspiration for Gen 10, the new Pokemon Center recalls iconic structures like the Balinese Bale or Warung, which are these kinds of structures and buildings, which again, it's really cool little details. They do a lot of small details like that in Pokemon games. Like, you can blame them for everything else, but you cannot blame them for actually the insane work they do on just some of the small details that they notice about stuff. Also, we spoke about this a little bit already, and I already made an entire video talking about this, but we do know that they've already hinted at the new mechanic in these games with the help of this Omega symbol. Again, just like in the case since X and Y, the Japanese logo of the Pokemon games always hide a symbol that's later connected to the generation's main gimmick. So in, the DNA symbol for X and Y was Mega Evolution. The crystal in Sun and Moon's logo was the Z Crystal or Z Moves. And I guess, did we really have anything for Sword and Shield? I don't know. I haven't seen the Japanese logo for Sword and Shield, to be honest with you. But Galar Stadiums and Dynamax used in competition. And then Scarlet and Violet, we had the Terra Crystal hint. Now, the Japanese logo in Winds and Waves also hides a symbol resembling an Omega symbol, yes. And the symbol is surrounded by a rainbow color and seems to glow with white light, the same light found in Western logos as the title background. This symbol is definitely tied to the gimmick and some sort of lore elements. But again, we'll have to wait and see what they do with that, because that's all up for debate at this point. Again, anything is freaking possible, but we do also have some cool theories. Like, one of these is actually from one of our viewers. It's specifically a theory in regards to, in this case, it's a theory in regards to a third legendary, what he thinks might be a third legendary. So he says, there is the Great Horned Serpent, which is a powerful mythical creature in Native American folklore and modern media, such as the Monument mythos and Harry Potter, known for controlling weather, water, and earth. And keep in mind, this entire game is very much about the weather. It's about nature, right? And it's about the unpredictability of it and environment and how Pokemon and humans interact with the environment and each other, right? Now, its ability typically includes shapeshifting, invisibility, and hypnotic powers. Now, listen, shapeshifting, we have already a theory that the two Pikachus, right? Mr. Windy Chew and Miss Wavy Chew, if you don't know them, they're basically these two new Pokemon, these Pikachu forms, Pokemon Winds and Waves website. We're going to go over there really quickly just to show you what I'm referring to. But we do know that these two fellas right here, now these two are oddly enough, right, hinted at potentially being the two legendaries in disguise, the two legendaries of Pokemon Winds and Waves in disguise. So the fact that he says that there is this creature, the Great Horned Serpent, and that it literally has shapeshifting as an ability is kind of cool. Invisibility and hypnotic powers, often featuring a jewel in their forehead, they are massive supernatural entities associated with immense destruction, telepathy, and reality bending, or in other contexts, as a magical or divine force. Powers and abilities in mythology and lore, weather control, often associated with controlling rain, thunder, and lightning. Again, this entire game, winds and waves. My brother, you get it. Magical abilities, invisibility, shapeshifting, and hypnosis. Those are big ones. And, you know, I don't know. Anything's possible. Physical traits, they're massive serpent-like with possessing horns. Healing and mystical items. The crystal in its head is said to grant powers, which is, again, interesting. And then spiritual connection, often seen as a divine or a spirit or a being ruling the underworld. And also, he found something else, which is a whole chunk, which is a Winnebago tradition. The bear spirit is a foundational, powerful entity, often recognized as the chief of the bear species and a key figure in the medicine rite and war ceremonies. The bear clan is one of the most significant clans, with members traditionally serving as leaders and protectors. War and leadership blessings, the bear spirit grants warriors success in battle. Now, a bear legendary would be cool, but I kind of doubt that that would be the case here. I do feel like the Great Horned Serpent makes more sense to me personally. But again, I just wanted to share this theory from George because he did send some great stuff. I thought it would be worth it to, like, you know, just take a look at it, share it with you guys, see what you all think about it. But yeah, let's move on to the next thing, which is going to be, I think we've already covered this. So we're going to move over to the next thing, which I think in this case is going to be... we kind of already talked a little bit about some stuff, but we haven't really talked about the starters in this video much. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about what the starters are going to be. And one of the biggest theories right now is that all the starters are based around the concept of sound, right? Like all of them are being based around sound. And some people have been suggesting that maybe Pombon is actually, I mean, obviously based on a Pomeranian dog, but also potentially some people are thinking that, hey, could it be based on the New Guinea singing dog? Like, could they base that, like its evolution on that? And the fact that all three of the starters, and I think we can see that specifically here from none else than our friends Pokemon Millennium, who actually did a whole theory that the fact that in previous posts they said they speculated all the possible design inspirations and evolutionary lines of Generation 10 starters, like Ralts, Pombon, and Gekwa. These starters might share a unifying theme, which is music or generally sounds. Ralts and Kakapo is famous, Kakapaos, which are these birds, these like non-flying, I guess you could say, non-flying parrots. They're like these green non-flying parrots that are in New Zealand, and these are famous for their lecking, which is a system where males use their call to attract females, often utilizing burrows dug into the ground to amplify the sound. And then Pombon, or Barong, in Balinese culture, Barong doesn't exist without its music. The Barong, which is this giant creature, right, which could be inspiration for our little friend Pombon here, partially, of course. The Barong dance is extensively linked to a percussion instrument orchestra. Additionally, during the dances, an iconic sound is the noise of its jaw. Then we have Gekwa, right, which is based possibly on the Tokai Gecko, which is this thing, which, I mean, I can see the inspiration, man. I can see it. But it's possible it's connected to it. As we already mentioned in the Water Starters dedication post, the male Tokai Gecko emits a very onomatopoeia distinct call, practically a vocalization. So we could have Gekwa, vocalization or voice, right? That. Pombon for rhythm, he dancing. And then, of course, Brow for amplification, bass, right? Possible. It's possible. It's possible it could be based around that, which also brings up the theory, which actually connects to Pokemon, specifically Pokopia, the upcoming Pokemon game. It's possible that the new form of I was about to forget his name, Rotom. There's a new form of Rotom called DJ Rotom, which is specifically related to music, but also is the first Rotom that we've gotten in a long time. That's an actual form of a Pokemon, or a form of Rotom that isn't just like a mobile phone or something, right? Like it's not like just a random piece of hardware, but it's like well, I mean, it's kind of a piece of hardware, but it's like not something we, the player, are actively, you know, carrying around in our pocket or something, but rather, it seems like this DJ, Rotom could potentially be a hint. I'm just saying, potentially a hint to a sound type. Now, we have been talking about the potential ID and the concept of a sound typing being added to Pokemon for an ungodly amount of time, okay? We've been talking about this for the longest time ever, but it's possible it could happen now. I'm just saying. And I'm going to make a whole video talking about this a bit further and potentially what that would look like. But again, it's all up in the air for now. We'll have to wait and see. Also, some interesting point out by my boy Rydog, who came out and said, yo, I have a batshit insane theory, but is it possible that the next Legends game could be Hoenn to capitalize on this diving technology and engine? Mark my effing words. And I actually I like this idea, right? The idea that, is it possible, right, that because they've now made an entire diving system for this game, it would be really dumb to throw away that diving system and not reuse it again. And where could they reuse it? Legends Johto. 7.8 out of 10. Too much water. IGN. If you know, you know. It's so possible that could happen. And I had this tinfoil hat theory that we could get like Ruby Sapphire ports specifically to match with this. Because we do know for a fact that Ruby and Sapphire, right? Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald are actually compatible with the Switch based on some of the data and leaks that came out about Pokemon Fire and Leaf Green ports on the Switch. We know that Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald are seemingly also planned based on that information. They're in the files there. They left behind some data that adds connectivity between them, which, ladies and gentlemen, that means they could possibly do a Ruby Sapphire thing, right? Ruby Sapphire Emerald ports, and then follow it up with a Legends Hoenn game, right? I'm not saying these ports would happen this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after next year. Who knows? But it is a possibility. I'm just saying, okay? It is very much a possibility. So I just thought it would be fun to mention. But yeah. So that is that. Next up, though, we have a quick thing here from Yami. Says, so the Pokemon Winds and Waves map is basically Indonesia, Malaysia, southern Thailand, and Singapore stitched together, which, yes, it does look to be that case, right? It's kind of mixing together all of these countries in, you know, like, well, actually, this is all just Indonesia right here, but basically mixing together a bunch of things like parts of Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Brunei, you know, everything all into one, which is kind of crazy if you really think about it. It's kind of nuts. And this is, by the way, the map. If you want to know what the map looks like, this is the map of Pokemon Winds and Waves. This is what it looks like, literally, because this was already leaked. And of course, things could have changed, obviously, but I think majority of this is going to be the same in the final product. So just a fair warning in regards to that. But next thing, though, which is interesting from Jan, which is the fact that the trailer did not say early 2027, but just 2027, makes me wonder, makes me believe it won't be early 2027, likely April or later. I am concerned, and I am worried that we won't get this game until like November next year, okay? Which means we have 2 years until this game actually releases. But a lot of people are speculating it's going to come out in April or sometime around then. So like in the first half of the year, not the end of the year, which I don't know, man. I don't know if they would want to do that given how big this game is and the idea of, and the fact that they could possibly use this game as a massive system seller and stuff like that. But also ideally, you'd want to get a big Pokemon game like this out. I mean, I know we got Pokopia coming out and we got Pokemon Champions and all that, but I mean, Pokopia might sell some copies, but I don't know if Pokopia is large enough to system sell, right? To actually sell entire systems. I do think Winds and Waves is large enough to sell multiple systems, multiple Switch 2s. So I'm very curious to see how that turns out. Saying, for example, here, comparison with the Legends ZA reveal trailer, also just 2025, and Legends Arceus reveal trailer, early 2022, which also, you can see, just said, these ones said early 2022, this one said just worldwide 2025, and this just says 2027. So I don't know. Also, Sutami says, true, but I think they just did the year to give themselves some space. Likely did it for ZA too. I think if they are happy enough with it, they will push it out, if possible, before Golden Week holiday. But if not, it'll be a big end of the year holiday release, which, yes, that looks like the case here. It looks like it's going to be the end of the year, which, man, it's going to have to wait so long, man. But I know a lot of people are excited about it, coming out later, because that gives you more time to just, more time for them to work on it and stuff like that. So again, I won't say much further on that. Again, we talked about we already broken down some of the details here. So, or not broken down, but rather we spoke about them. But also, interestingly, is this right here from Centro, who says, Pikachu is getting a new model in Gen 10. However, the redesign is not as big as originally planned. So this is how originally they wanted to redesign Pikachu to look like, right? That's what they wanted to do to our boy. They are going completely, like, my man went on Ozempic. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, they do not want him to be chunky, which is really unfortunate because Pikachu being chunky is peak Best Pikachu is Chunky Pikachu. However, in the trailer, we see that they didn't go all in on that. They did redesign him, and they even gave him a new type of animation, which is really cool. But you can see in the live-action trailer that he does look a little bit more even more skinny than before. I don't know, man. But kind of a little detail I want to share with you guys as well. And then here we have some thoughts from Naho. Says Winds and Waves seems to be using Galar scripts, which the text kind of fonts or whatever they're using seem to be the case. Which, yeah, I mean, they're just using that same like made-up Pokemon text that they use all the time, so it's not that crazy. But we can also see some cool little details, like for example the rice paddy fields here look great. We can also see, like, you know, some of the iconography they're going to use and stuff like that. We even have like a bit of a rainbow theme going on, which kind of could connect potentially. I mean, this thing right here could be also related to the whole gimmick and all that. Who knows? But yeah, just another small detail. Also, as people notice that the actual hotel we're going to be staying in seems to have an octopus design to it, right? Like these octopus shapes, which some people are wondering, does that mean we might get like, I mean, listen, we're going to like Southeast Asia, dude. I'd love to see a Kraken, like an actual Kraken Pokemon, not just a regular octopus, anything like that, like an actual Kraken, like a giant mega octopus, okay? Like the biggest one you can possibly imagine. That would be so freaking cool, especially in a region like this where you could hide it in the ocean and have it like an event Pokemon that's just out there. You can trigger, you know, an event to make it appear, which I think would be really cool. Or potentially people are saying this could be just a new octopus Pokemon, just a small one. But we'll have to wait and see. Also, people have noticed that there were a lot of hints in previous Pokemon posts or Pokemon things that hinted potentially at the colors of the upcoming games and things like that. So again, potentially even the beer, like the beer bottles or whatever here from Pokemon ZA could have been hints to the colors of these games. Also, I think the door design in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet here is actually of Tropius, and I think somebody said like it was like a gloom in the bottom, which could be from the trailer we just saw with, you know, Tropius showing up and gloom. But yeah, even here somebody's saying like, oh yeah, like Riordan saying like, hey, this picture with the outfit could be a reference to this outfit that Miss Wavychu has. It's possible. Again, no guarantees. But yeah, I think that pretty much should be most of it. Again, we already spoke about the new battle pose as well, right? Which it literally has a new pose that it uses, like Pikachu, which normally doesn't, but now it does. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think that pretty much summarizes everything for this video. I just want to make this one real quick because there was a lot of details that I kind of overlooked. There's like so many details that I completely like looked over, and I think maybe some of you guys also did. But yeah, now you all know it. Now I all know it. So thank you all for watching, and hopefully you guys will be enjoying the next few videos. Peace out and bye-bye.